I look forward to a united, strong and prosperous Nigeria that will definitely play a leading role in Africa, continental role, and also in world affairs.
Focused, dedicated, decisive, yet mystified in humility. His hometown Jada was relatively unknown in 1946 when he was born, but today the story is told differently. Progressive reference is made to Jada because ATIKU Abubakar has attained outstanding success in his private and public ventures. ATIKU Abubakar is undoubtedly a Democrat, a Nigerian nationalist and politician from the Fulani ethnic stock, whose philanthropic gestures have benefited many, irrespective of their tribal or religious background. Unlike many of his peers, he has maintained cordial relationships with Nigerians from all walks of life. He remains in harmony with his surroundings and at peace with his creator. Adversity in early life taught him to be kind and compassionate. His childhood experience as a manager of his family livestock farm taught him the value of patience. His lonely and deprived childhood developed in him an intense love for people and for a large family. Atiku's 20-year career in the Department of Customs and Excise exposed him to a larger and more complex world.
Those days in Lagos, when he started, 5 of them used to come then. He used to lead, younger boy among them. When we were in that barrack, the house, they always appear in the evenings. I'm very close to late Yadwa.
The Waziri of Adamawa was friends with our elder brothers and uncles in Borno in the 70s. And our fathers, who were in business at that time, had taken him under their wing, and he used to support them. They were into imports and exports, and he eventually became a household name in Borno State. So all through the service, and when he left service and joined business and established Nicotis with Mr. Volpi, we were aware of his progress, his steady progress, and his relationship with the late General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua.
His Excellency has to be somebody I realize that is one of the most detribalized Nigerians I've ever met in my life. I had the privilege of serving under him as his assistant at the Muritala Mohammed Airport. That was the era of drug trafficking. He's somebody who is very astute in administration. I learned a lot from him, and when I took over from him as the area controller, I just continued what he has laid down.
As a young officer then, he was an acting assistant controller. But then he was area administrator of Apapa, and Apapa is a premium port. You don't give it to an idiot. He commanded Apapa as an assistant controller. I'm probably one of the youngest officers that commanded Apapa. And most of the traders were Igbos. Oji Kalo, Nana Kalo, all the Kalos and co. And at that time, area administrators are very powerful. He helped them in trade facilitation. He never seized goods, except if they are prohibitive.
Don't forget the issue of the 53 suitcases was the courageous nature of Atiku at the Muritala Mohammed International Airport. That was when they brought in 53 suitcases of some contraband. And he impounded them. Everybody was worried. Said, oh, where is this 53? Who is behind the 53 suitcases? And fingers were being pointed at the government. But Atiku professionally did his job and impounded those 53 suitcases. It was very historic at that time. And people thought that heavens will fall. No, he stood his ground. And those 53 suitcases were impounded. So as a customs officer, he was very professional.
When I was in a big bank, he was a customer at the Tafawa Balewa Square. Thereafter, I met him personally, and we became friends in 1986 when he applied for a facility which he used well for agriculture that period. I had to go and visit them in Yola with an analyst from the bank, and we had to see what we were going to lend money to, and he made it possible for us.
In 1987, on the second anniversary of his coup, President Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, more popular as IBB, announced the setting up of a constituent assembly to debate and adopt a new constitution for the country. He also announced the creation of the National Electoral Commission, NEC. In May 1989, a month after Atiku Abubakar formally left the services of the customs to face the life of business and politics, the Babangida administration lifted the ban on party politics. The military president, as he then was, also announced a revised transition timetable that would lead to the installation of an elected civilian government. Following the announcement by the IBB administration, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua and his political associates unveiled the People's Front of Nigeria. The People's Front of Nigeria would later work with the Social Democratic Party, SDP, at the next general election. By 1992, Atiku faced an uphill task as a candidate for the presidency of Nigeria. He was pitched against formidable opponents in Babagana Kingibe and Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, a wealthy businessman from the southwest region. To many observers of the evolution of Nigeria's political history, it was a political mystery as to why Yar'Adua would prefer Chief MKO Abiola to Atiku Abubakar, a member of his political family. However, General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua believed Abiola offered the best hope to end military rule in Nigeria because, having been disqualified twice, Yar'Adua believed Babangida would cancel the result of the election if a northern politician emerged the winner. Yar'Adua's argument was persuasive. His group met with Abiola. An agreement was reached. Atiku Abubakar was asked to step down to pave the way for Chief MKO Abiola's emergence. Ever thinking of the good of Nigerians, Atiku was willing to make personal sacrifices to end military rule in the country. For this, he could not afford to disrespect his political godfather, Yar'Adua. No doubt, some of his supporters were disappointed. They felt he stood a better chance of winning the election and that there was no need for him to step down for Abiola. Abiola won the SDP presidential ticket by defeating his rival, Babagana Kingibe. At the same time, the little-known Bashir Tofa emerged as the National Republican Convention NRC standard-bearer.
We were, myself, Okadibo, Yaya Kwande, the late Chikechibwe, were angry. When he told us that Shehu Yar'Adua had spoken that he should step down, we refused. We said, let's go and meet Shehu. Let's go for the runoff, because there were only 3 of them. And we were already negotiating trying to make alliances, build bridges, so that he will win. But all of a sudden, Shehu told him to step down for MKO for one simple reason. He said, Turaki, if you win and the military annul the election, the northern elites will tell you, just don't worry, it is the Lord who gives power and the Lord who takes, and the military will continue. He said, but if Abiola wins and the military annul, he said the Southwest will rise and that will be the end of the military. And that's exactly what happened. So to that extent, Yar'Adua was a prophetic politician.
The Yar'Adua group waited anxiously for the formal announcement of Atiku as running mate to Abiola as earlier agreed, but that was not to be. Abiola named Kingibe instead.
Atiku was a serious contender. For him to rub shoulders with the likes of MKO that time was not something that anybody could just take it for granted, you know. And from all the permutations, at a point in time, he was a serious threat to MKO Abiola. And you know, it was option A4 for some of us that believed that he should have continued the race. You know, it was a painful decision. I was very young that time. We're all looking onto him to be the president.
Atiku Abubakar could have embarked on a vengeful mission to derail the SDP, but instead he saw beyond the hurt of rejection. He was more concerned with the success of the party. Knowing how deeply upset Yar'Adua was with Abiola, Atiku knew he could not persuade his boss to support Abiola again. He was close enough to know that former military ruler Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was one person Yar'Adua could not refuse. Atiku traveled to see Obasanjo at his Ota farm. He begged the former head of state to appeal to Yar'Adua to back Chief MKO Abiola. Atiku believed that the Yar'Adua group needed to work closely with Abiola to get Babangida out of office and the military back to the barracks for the good of the country. Chief Obasanjo was impressed with Atiku's selflessness and patriotism. Here was a man who had been rejected by Abiola, yet he still wanted to assist him in winning the election. He found it genuinely remarkable that Atiku had such a forgiving heart. That was leadership and a unique trait of humility and patriotic zeal on the part of Atiku Abubakar. Obasanjo promised to speak to his former deputy Yar'Adua. Atiku and the Yar'Adua group went on to campaign for Abiola in their respective states. Atiku also made a massive contribution to Chief MKO Abiola's campaign funding. Nigeria was on edge until June 8, 1998, when General Sani Abacha died. The successive government opted for a new transition program which would lead to the inauguration of an elected civilian government by May 29, 1999. General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who called the shots, began a short, intensive but realistic march to civil rule. With another transition program unveiled, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar joined the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in 1998 and returned to Adamawa in pursuit of his long-time dream of governing the state. The January 9, 1999 governorship election was a close race. Atiku Abubakar was declared winner in a keenly contested election against his All People's Party APP opponent, Bala Takaya. On November 2, 1998, Obasanjo formally declared his intention to seek nomination to contest for the presidency on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, PDP.
When we came to this current dispensation that started in 1998, he contested as the governorship candidate with Boni Haruna as his deputy in Adamawa State. He won election. But because of his track record of being a realistic and practical Democrat, the leadership of the team Obasanjo, you know, the team Obasanjo at that time had those generals that you can refer to as legitimizers. They wanted somebody who was level-headed, who was a calm Democrat, so as to support a military man like Obasanjo to navigate the challenges of that time. And they all settled for ATIKU ABUBAKAR.
Atiku's strength has always been his capacity to mobilize human and material resources for the success of any given task. He brought his friends and fellow Yaradua group members into the Obasanjo presidential campaign. He got former Senate President Iyorchia Ayu as campaign coordinator. It was Atiku Abubakar who also recruited Chief Tony Aneni as the South-South coordinator of the campaign.
In 1999, I remember clearly that it was Atiku Abubakar who made sure he got all his friends, I don't want to mention names, to put down the money for part of our campaign. He himself had a deep pocket because he's an entrepreneur. He was already an entrepreneur by the time we came on board.
When Obasanjo came out from prison, a few of us, myself, Ibeto, Chika Okafo, Sunday Afolabi, and Atiku Abubakar contributed money and donated to his account because at that time he had no money. And part of the discussion was that, well, one thing you must give Obasanjo, he has brilliant ideas. The only thing is that he's a leader with a small mind. He can chase you for the sin of your grandfather. And he told us his dream about Nigeria, making it a Singapore of West Africa. So we all bought into it, which was why a few of us contributed initially for his empowerment. Of course, in 2003, it became another story. And that is when I know that power corrupts, and absolute power, if unchecked, corrupts absolutely.
The Nigeria, which Obasanjo and Atiku inherited on May 29, 1999, was a weak and deeply divided nation on the brink of collapse. All over the country, there existed an army of idle, angry, and demoralized people. These political and economic problems had heightened ethnic restiveness and religious fundamentalism, leaving Nigeria constantly under the threat of disintegration.
We got into Abuja, government was being formed. There was need for accommodation of people at various levels, ministers, special advisors, and there were, defined quotas. So, Atiku now advised Mr. President, Excellency, let me provide a solution for us to make sure we can bring in our people who work for us. We already have special advisors. We can also have senior special assistants to the president who are at par with special advisors, since the special advisors themselves are also at par with ministers of the Federal Republic. Your Excellency, you can now exercise, your width and latitude to appoint as many people as you can. Obasanjo more or less breathed a sigh of relief because he was not able to bring in these people. So, what you take away from that, therefore, is that we have an ATIKU ABUBAKAR who is a problem solver. In the days preceding, the altercations between ATIKU and his principal at the time, I've been at meetings where, Obasanjo congratulated and commended ATIKU for helping to, douse situations, calm situations. He brings that to bear, into his style.
ATIKU was very fortunate because President Obasanjo had actually given him substantial authority over the management of Nigeria's economy at the time. There was extensive deregulation, liberalization, and privatization of public enterprises in this country. These enterprises then became very, very efficient. They were diversified, they were expanded in scope, and they became very, very successful and contributed to employment and national income. There was a pension act that was introduced that brought about the Nigerian Pension Commission. And in addition to that, there were major capital market reforms as well, both in the Securities and Exchange Commission and also the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We were able at that time to set up institutions such as the ICPC and the EFCC. So in a nutshell, what we are talking about is that on his own watch and that of his boss, they were able to engineer policies that was going to change the face and character of Nigerian society. And the results were outstanding.
Before the advent of the Fourth Republic, ATIKU and Obasanjo's paths had crossed thrice: in Maiduguri, during Obasanjo's visit as head of state to ATIKU's Customs Command in 1978, in Ota, 1993, when ATIKU sought Obasanjo's help in getting Yar'Adua to support Abiola to win the June 12 election, and in 1995, when ATIKU went to Obasanjo's farm to warn him about his impending arrest by Abacha security agents over trumped-up charges of plotting a coup. These encounters were brief and instructive. However, it was only after Obasanjo joined the presidential race that the two men began to relate closely.
He was supposed to be the governor of Adamawa State, and fortunately, before we were sworn in, he was sworn in as the VP instead of governor of Adamawa State. So we worked very closely with him throughout the 8 years in office. He was in office for 8 years as the VP, and we were in office for 8 years as governors. Our relationship was very cordial, very beautiful relationship. He was quite a nice fellow. He wasn't an overbearing boss. One thing you will like about him is that the Waziri of Adamawa himself is a very, very detribalized Nigerian. If you go to his office, if you went to his office that time, the staff are, it was like a mini Nigeria because the staff in his office were from all parts of the country. He had people from the west, from the south, from the north, everywhere, from the east.
In the hand of an uncooperative, difficult, and selfish president, the 1999 Constitution could render a vice president powerless, redundant, and frustrated. ATIKU clearly understood the limitations of his new office. He understood that in the corridors of power, it could be political suicide for a deputy to be perceived as trying to upstage his boss.
There was some misunderstanding between him and the president then, and I remember we had the president made his declaration at the International Conference Center of his intention to contest for a second tenure. And in all the speech he made, he never mentioned Atiku, and the people read meanings into it. And I think that was the beginning of their little misunderstanding. Some governors took sides on the side of Atiku. Some were on the side of Obasanjo. But I think the majority was more in favor of Atiku at the time that crisis was on.
ATIKU Abubakar has been serially misunderstood and misrepresented by sheer malice and orchestrated character assassination by his former principal. So much dirt has been thrown at him on the score of alleged corruption by people who rarely know him. Ironically, each time such allegations came up, Atiku put himself up for investigation. Several times, he has been interrogated by all the government's anti-corruption agencies, including the ICPC and EFCC, and he has always come out clean.
In a particular instance, for instance, somebody accused him the other day that he approved the sale of Ajaokuta steel rolling mills and was trying to draw a comparison. You know, the project was frittered for $120,000 and Nigerian government has to repurchase it for $460. You know, nothing can be more, damaging and more criminal, especially for somebody who, who didn't know the head or tail of the issue. Indeed, under his guidance, the Council on Privatization advised against the sale. But don't forget that there was a full government department, the Bureau of Public Enterprises, then led by Nasiru El-Rufai, which took the final decisions on what went and what didn't go. We need to get this very clear because, unfortunately, the man has suffered, drawn a lot of flack, actually wrongly, and offensively, unfairly as well, from people who don't understand, the nitty-gritty of what happened. We need to get it very clear. So much debt was thrown at him, by his principal at the time and agents of his principal, because Atiku Abubakar dared to challenge legally his boss over his bid for a third term.
I went to Obasanjo 2019 after Atiku got primaries to literally thank him. And I said, and I stayed in his hotel. I was his guest, stayed in his hotel. We had breakfast, I stayed a day. And I said, sir, we're all in the system with you. I knew you were really angry with my principal. I am happy as a Christian that you have forgiven him. And I am happy that you are towing the line of a statesman. But let me ask you, is this for real? What happened? Knowing how I knew the level of animosity, the level of quarrel, that today you are the one that is saying that you are supporting Atiku to be president. I say, what happened? You say, well, that is it. And he said, the international community, they are buying into this. They are buying into this. And I now asked him, what really was the problem? There's this issue of corruption. What is this? What is the problem? Do you know that Obasanjo could not tell me one single incident of corruption?
PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, I called them. I said, look, I want you to advise us on how we can provide sufficient power for Nigeria before we leave office. And they went around this country and produced a report which convinced me that we could provide enough power supply to this country before leaving office by 2000. We left office 2007, right? By 2005, 2 years before leaving office, we would have provided, enough electricity, in this country. I tried to push it through with the president to get his approval, but he was more inclined to power supply by gas. And I told him that was based on advice I got from many of the oil companies. It was going to take not less than 7 to 10 years, but he insisted on that. And that's why he set up the power committee and made me the chairman. And I declined to actually participate as a chairman, and I left to the Minister of Power then, who was the deputy chairman of the committee, to handle that. And that was how we ended up in this, chaotic situation today.
With what you went through in the latter years of the Obasanjo administration, if there is anything to be pinned on him, he would have been jailed. There's no question about that, because from all indications, they were looking for what to pin on him, and nobody could see anything. And you see a lot of people talking about corruption, and I think even in the service, when we work together in customs, they say customs is corrupt, but you can't say that of him. In terms of, he was doing the work as it should be done.
Akin Kekereekun is one of Nigeria's finest financial and project managers. He served as chairman of the Technical Committee of the National Council for Privatization, NCP, while Malam Nasser El-Rufai was Director General of the Bureau for Public Enterprises, BPE. Both men were close to the former vice president. In the course of the privatization of some government-run organization, an incident occurred.
He had a relationship with the Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprise. He also had a relationship with people like us who are external members of the council. There was a particular incident where a gentleman wanted to pay for his interest in a particular bid, and the deadline has been over. And the DG at that time felt that we shouldn't take the money. But he spoke to me and he said I should speak to the vice president. I did. And at that time, once I told him the implication of our taking the money, he agreed with us that we should not take the money. And we did not take the money. That's the kind of person he is.
Professor Sylvester Monya was the special advisor on performance, monitoring, and evaluation to President Goodluck Jonathan. He believed that the lack of understanding of what privatization entails had led many Nigerians to misconstrue privatization to be the same thing as selling public assets or stripping a country of its assets.
You will recall that when GSM was introduced, they were made, the bidders for the GSM license were made to pay about $200 million each for their license to be able to operate. Then we had Econet and MTN, if you remember. So they paid $200 million plus the setup costs and everything, and their projection was that they would make profit in maybe 5 years. As you and I know today, they made profit in less than 6 months. Now, our NITEL, because they were a federal government entity, they were given GSM license free of charge. Free of charge. Where is NITEL? Where is their license today? That is what we're talking about. So when you hear that an Atiku presidency is pro-private sector, he is not saying it because he has friends in the private sector. Obviously, he has friends in the private sector, but that's not the objective. The objective is delivery of superior results.
I used to say in the civil service, my people. Oh, my people. Mr. President, my people have asked me to vote no on tenure extension.
Many undiscerning Nigerians did not know that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, as a Democrat, was at the forefront of the fight to stop the third-term plot of President Olusegun Obasanjo. He was, in fact, the field marshal of the anti-third-term movement. It is believed that his role in the collapse of the well-funded project earned him the wrath of Chief Obasanjo.
Those in support of the motion that the bill be now read a second time, say aye. Contrary? Contrary has it. So, by this result, the Senate has said clearly and eloquently that we discontinue further processes on this amendment bill.
I don't think anybody can speak of that anti-third term struggle in the Senate over and beyond my humble self. So it was the Vice President Atiku Abubakar who marshaled the other governors, from James Ibori to Tinubu to Ojikalu to Bafarawa, Kure, and then Co. And then we held a meeting at the Niger State Governor's Lodge, where he himself, Atiku Abubakar, came there physically and addressed us, the National Assembly, both Senate and House of Reps. Said, we must not allow this to succeed. It will derail our democracy. Before the final slaying of that third-term effort on the 16th of May, 2006. So you can see his democratic credentials.
Congratulations, Your Excellency, for your incredible passion, your dedication, and commitment to building the future generations. You're helpers of other people's destinies.
A man gifted with sporting talents. The story is told of how Atiku worked for Akinwumi Adesina in securing the support of South Africa towards his election as the first Nigerian president of the African Development Bank, AFDB. This is after 50 years of the existence of the bank.
And His Excellency did not hesitate. He took me, flew me on his jet. We went to South Africa to see the president of South Africa. And I had only 5 minutes to make my case. And he was standing right beside me. I made the case, and I remember the president of South Africa looked at him and said, I think I have in front of me the future president of the African Development Bank. I want to publicly thank you, Your Excellency, because without that journey and helping my destiny, I probably wouldn't be president of the African Development Bank. So I want to say thank you very much, sir, for that journey that you took me to South Africa.
This is the book I published since 2004. It's on restructuring of this country.
For a man who has been severally described as cosmopolitan, Atiku Abubakar is the only candidate in the presidential election who has been openly vocal about the restructuring of Nigeria. This is evident in the book, My Covenant with Nigerians, where he shared his ideas about restructuring, which he believes will unlock the full potential of Nigeria.
One of the programs I think we should let him implement is the restructuring of this country, which is going to be of benefit to every part of the country. Let nobody deceive you that restructuring will favor some people and will go against some people. This is what people are preaching. They are preaching it for their selfish interest, not for the good of all of us. But for the good of all of us, we need to restructure. We need to get the best out of Nigerians. We need to get people to work hard. We need to get people to struggle. We need to have a healthy competition between the components in Nigeria. And we need to live a symbiotic life. Every part of this country has something to contribute. There's no part of the country that has nothing to contribute. And that is the benefit of being a large, diverse country.
One thing I can probably vouch for is that ATIKU will keep to all his promises. I was there when my people in the Southwest confronted him in the last dispensation, in the last election. He gave us his word that restructuring will be one of the things he will tackle. And he has repeated it.
ATIKU Abubakar is flesh and blood. He is far from perfect and makes no attempt to claim to be infallible. Politics taught him focus, determination, and the ability to manage people. His success in life is proof that the Nigerian dream exists and that with providence and hard work, every Nigerian citizen, irrespective of background, can aspire to any position in life.
Most people tend to focus on his tenure as vice president without actually putting into context who the man ATIKU is. So who is ATIKU and what does he stand for? You know, the interesting thing about Nigerian customs is that it is a very large paramilitary institution, a parastatal that is very, very large. It's a regulatory body as well, and therefore it has a helicopter view of the entire federal system of government, because it interacts with a number of other federal bodies and institutions. So his sojourn in Nigerian customs has actually given him the opportunities to know this country very well. In the process, he has actually built lasting partnerships with a number of institutions and individuals in this country and outside. That job had also exposed him to the world, and he's become a man of the world. So that more or less built him into who he is and what he is.
As the road to 2023 becomes narrower yet busy, Nigerians look anxiously forward to electing a detribalized and urban leader with capacity.
While I was the governor of Osun State, I got a message from him through DSP Alaye Messia, may so rest in peace, that Waziri ATIKU Abubakar will want me to mediate, to resolve the differences between him and his boss. I never thought somebody of that political status will condescend so low to ask me to come and mediate. And I never believe DSP. when we go to Abeokuta, that thing was between me, Waziri, and Baba Obasanjo. Nobody knew about the plan. And Baba talked of how he deliberately left Waziri to handle the home front. He said that he left governance to him for the first 4 years. And his intention was for him to take him around the world, that this is the incoming successor. So I'm saying that he was a tested hand in terms of ruling this country. And that's why I say it's from authoritative source, because I heard it from the two of them. That is one quality he has over and above the rest of his mates.
He's a team leader and a child of destiny. Can I also tell you, even now, I pray to God Almighty to grant him success.
First of all, he has a paramilitary background. Then his nature as a person. He's somebody who can manage people. And he is humble enough to respect everybody, whether you're junior, middle, or above. For one, Atiku is not afraid of confronting issues. Now, when you have that kind of capacity, you can put people together. You can get people to work together, and you can lead. So an individual like Atiku is somebody who has been exposed to all these things. Because 8 years as a vice president, an active vice president, and a vice president who was so strong and powerful and influential, warrants that he has learned or has enough experience, if he's given that opportunity, to do what is necessary. One, he has the discipline. Two, today he has the maturity. Three, he has the connections. Four, he has the resources. Today, when people, yes, he may have been a very successful businessman to date, but money is not an issue. Personal gain is not an issue. Today is service to the nation, legacy issues.
In 2000, Dim Chukwuemeka Megojuku was making frantic efforts to come and see President Obasanjo to make a case, very strong case, for the Biafran army officers who came into Biafra army from the Nigerian army. Unfortunately, he was not able to get audience with President Obasanjo. So I went to see the Vice President, ATIKU ABUBAKAR. Now, the Vice President now gave me his aircraft and told me to make a reservation at the Hilton Transcorp for a presidential suite for 1 week. Fortunately, President Obasanjo accepted Dim's request, and it came to pass. That's how you saw that Nigerian officers who were in Biafra as Biafran army officers were now formally retired and pensioned. The same thing now happened to the Nigerian police officers who now became Biafran police officers. So if the vice president did not initiate the move to get that meeting to take place between President Obasanjo and Dim Chukwuemeka Megojuku, this would not have happened.
It is no mistake to portray Alhaji Atiku Abubakar as that singular politician who has made concessions more than any other individual seeking to lead Nigeria, especially in the last 3 decades.
This is not the normal time that you say, let us go and experiment because we are doing democracy. You need somebody who is stable mentally, stable physically, stable with knowledge and experience to help navigate this country out of the woods. Otherwise, we will collapse. So you cannot leave somebody who has run a federal government, who knows the nature of the issues and the problems, who knows the intricacies of national governance. Governing Nigeria is not moi moi, with due respect. You have no power of compulsion that you have as a governor. As a governor, you direct, you say things and it happens. In federal government, you negotiate for things to be done. And that's the only person who has the knowledge, the experience, and those attributes is His Excellency ATIKU ABUBAKAR, GCON.
A quote from the famous book, Atiku, The Story of Atiku Abubakar, by Kogi-born journalist Onukaba Adinoye-Ojo, now of blessed memory, likened the Waziri in Adamawa to the sandalwood that gives its fragrance to even the axe that will cut it down.
When he had his misunderstanding with his boss, I thought I could intervene by bringing in someone that was highly respected by Mr. President, so that he could intervene. One thing that the person I brought, because I don't want to narrow down before it goes to the public space, it was then, he told me to tell my boss to do a particular thing when he sees his boss. I won't tell you what it is. I told my boss, and he said, Tokunbo, it doesn't cost me anything. That shows humility. And at the meeting, he did exactly what the man said he should do. Shows complete humility.
If people go through 1/10 of what Atiku is going through or has gone through at the hands of people that ordinarily would have, been singing his praises for what he has done in their lives. Some people would have been either in their graves because of high BP, or would have been so angry that they could take it to another stage. So that is it. I mean, look at somebody like him who lost election 2019, lost in court. And the amount of treachery and betrayal in that election by those that some of them that were given responsibility to do. But here he is. He has normal blood pressure. He has normal blood pressure at his age. So this is the kind of person we are dealing with.
Critics say he is too tolerant and trusting. His admirers say he is reliable and does not forget friends. But by character, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar can best be described as a man gifted with the tenderness of a lamb and the heart of a lion.
When the form for 2003 nomination form was bought in Mina by late Governor Kure, that nomination form was brought to my lodge by the ADC of Governor Kure. And I took this form. I took it to our principal. I said, sir, lock this form in your... If it is God's will that you will be president of this country, you will be president. Don't be president under this circumstance. I know out there, if we go to the field, you win primaries, but don't be president under this atmosphere, under this circumstance. That was how this form did not see the light of the day. So, years after, Atiku has not become president, and it was becoming a burden to me. that I was one of those that played the role that he should not run. See what God is doing in his life today. In the 33 years of Atiku's political life, he has never enjoyed the spontaneous support that he's getting across the country. In my state, is bipartisan. Is everywhere. The national consensus I was telling you about is coming up. You know, so I am trusting that this is Atiku's time.
The unity of our country, which has been threatened in the last 7 to 8 years, the security challenges we are facing in this country, the economic challenges we are facing in this country, education, and then restructuring. So these are the 5 key areas that if I have the opportunity, I want to deal with and restore Nigeria to its rightful place as the greatest country in Africa, and which can play a very, very effective role in international affairs.